Hi, I'm David from Avika Photography, and really quick I wanted to give you a comparison between the Sony a6000 and the Nikon D7100. This is considered the best APS-C size digital SLR on the market, and this is considered the best APS-C size mirrorless camera on the market. I actually use both of these cameras professionally. Nowadays, primarily more the Sony a6000. As a matter of fact, the video that you're watching right now is shot with a Sony a6000. Let me give you the quick comparisons between these. First, how they're alike. They actually share the same sensor. They're both 24 megapixel. This sensor is made by Sony for Nikon, and this sensor is obviously just made by Sony. Right off the bat, this obviously shoots twice as fast as the Nikon D7100. The major issue with the Nikon D7100 is when shooting in RAW on burst modes, just like I did, the buffer gets loaded up really fast, and it takes about 30 seconds for it to clear out. And it can actually lock up on you, which might be very frustrating. To get around that, you have to shoot in JPEG, and it'll keep shooting just fine. With this camera, no issues. But shooting these cameras, how are they different and how are they alike? When you shoot with RAW on both of these cameras, with this actual lens, they are identical. I actually couldn't tell the difference between the two in RAW therapy. To me, they look exactly the same. I don't see any issues. When it comes to JPEG in camera, though, they are completely different. At ISO 100, the Nikon is actually a bit softer than the Sony. The Sony has in-camera calibration when you're using a chipped lens. The Nikon does not. So this does all the lens corrections for you in camera, and it also has slightly deeper blacks in JPEG than the Nikon. Color-wise, they're exactly the same. If you use a white balance preset on both of these, you're going to get the exact same images. If I was to shoot this purple against this pink, with both of them, they'll be identical. But this one does actually just have slightly better blacks. When using them in a professional environment, I do a lot of catalog work for companies, mainly product work. And the thing that I noticed about these two is that this one in the studio actually seems to be a better camera. It does have a few minor flaws, like the live view isn't as bright as Nikon's live view. Let me pull this up here. There you go. So you can actually see the difference. The Nikon's got a bigger screen, it's brighter. This one has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times magnification, whereas this one only has 2 times magnification. And that makes a huge difference when you're actually autofocusing. But at the same time, the 2x magnification on this is very strong. So even though it doesn't take the same steps, it almost gets in as tight as the Nikon. The reason why I like using this camera over this one in a product environment, sometimes I'm shooting 100 products in a day. And this one with remote, you have to use a mirror lockup function. Because this has no mirror, you don't have to do that. Just a wireless remote, you shoot, go to the next one, you shoot. This one you have to press on the remote, then press on it again. And so it actually takes a little bit longer. But in the studio, when you're actually shooting, they deliver the same result. The biggest thing though is in the RAW file handling. ARW, I have nothing against ARW files, but with Nikon, the NEF, if you use View NX2, it's actually an extremely handy cataloging software, especially if you have a really fast PC. It'll allow us to go in and do quick adjustments to everything that we need to do, and I actually use it on the JPEGs from this camera just to make it that much easier on myself. But when it actually comes to raw processing, if you use View NX2 from Nikon, it does a really good job. If you use the Sony Digital Raw, I think is what it's called, it's clunky. It's not nearly as refined as View X2 is. Outside of that, the other major differences are this one shoots video at 1080 at 60 frames per second. This one will shoot video at 1080 at 30 frames per second. This one gives you full audio control. This one does not. It's either on or it's off. Flash-wise, if we talk about those for just a second, this flash, because it's pop-up and it's right over the hot shoe, you either have to use the hot shoe or the flash. This one, depending upon the wireless transmitter, you can actually get them both to work at the same time. Not that I would ever do that, but I have accidentally. The nice thing about this is you can pull this back and bounce directly off the ceiling in a pinch, and I kind of like that. One major disaster that Sony did do, and I talked about this in another video, is they actually painted the hot shoe. So if you can see right here, I'll try to hold it up here, you can see where I removed the paint out of the hot shoe. That makes all my wireless transmitters that I use with this work on this. SB800s and Yongnuo 560 Mark III flashes are primarily what I use for strobes. So they both work fine on both cameras. I can't tell the difference between them. This one might have a half a stop faster sync speed, but that's about it. As far as actually using them all the time and handling them, one thing that I really like about this is that the battery door is separate from the memory card door. So with this one you have dual memory cards. You don't really need it, but it's a nice feature to have. I buy 32 and 64 gig memory cards, so I'm never really pulling them out to actually worry about it. But because it's separated from the battery door, it's very easy to get to. And the way that we shoot here is our computers are in another room, so we pop the card out, then run in, dump it, and then bring it back, and keep going. On this camera though, the door is a little sticky sometimes, and doesn't always want to open. And so I leave it open on the tripod and then just pop the card out as needed. Battery life. I haven't really found a difference between the battery life of either of these cameras. But this one, when you're using the off-camera charger, is a lot faster to charge a battery. This one, the batteries are fairly slow to charge. Usually they take about 6 hours. I've always had 2 batteries for every camera though. So I've never run into a situation where I don't have battery power. Let me see here. The other major difference would be in the actual handling of the camera. For those of you that are used to shooting a DSLR and putting it up to your eyeball, it is actually kind of, I don't know, you get into this rhythm where that's what you want to do. You always want to look through the eyepiece. This actually has a very good eyepiece. It's very bright, it's optical, it's good. It's not as good as a Nikon D800. It's not nearly as bright or detailed, but it's pretty good. This eyepiece, however, is pointless. All it is streaming video into the actual eye cup, and it's video where you can actually see the grain of the screen. So I really haven't found any benefit to that unless you're running out of battery life. Then if you use the eyepiece, it doesn't go through the battery as fast. But this does have a flip out screen, which also makes it a little nicer in the studio, because I have a tendency to shoot above products so I can still see what I'm doing. Outside of that, I think they're both great cameras. I keep both of them around, but realistically, I really like the Sony a6000. It's just so light and handy and easy to use. When I do weddings, I have 2 of these strapped around my neck, along with a Nikon that's actually converted to infrared. And I prefer prime lenses. I don't like to zoom. So I've got different focal lengths or different style lenses. The nice thing about this a6000 is I have lots of lenses. I don't even want to tell you how many I have because it's just an insane amount. But I love manual focus lenses. So every time I see something that's unique, I grab it. and they can be really old or really new. In this case, with this camera, I discovered that I have Canon FD lenses that have been sitting around for quite a long time, 50mm f1.4s. And the Nikon 50mm 1.4, it's okay. It's a decent lens. It works fine on this. The nice thing about that is it actually has aperture control with manual focus lenses that are AI mount. On this you don't, but they're easy enough to use. But those FD lenses, for some reason, actually work on here really, really well. So it pretty much broadened my horizon as far as what I can do. The other thing too is the amount of adapters that you have for this. I can use this lens on this camera 3 different ways. I'll get into that into a different video next week. But for right now, I just wanted to give you a comparison between the two. And they both have strong points. But realistically, if you come from the world of photography, especially large format, working with just the LCD is actually very comfortable. At first it was kind of odd because it reminded me of trying to take pictures with my cell phone because you're like, eh. But I come from the days of using a Toyo CF carbon fiber 4x5, and that's what I shot all my fine art photography with before sensors got large enough. And I still actually use it all the time, but only for black and white, like really moody stuff. So with this, it actually feels like you're looking at the back of a view camera when you're using it. Simply because this eyepiece becomes irrelevant and it just doesn't matter. That's the other thing that drives me nuts about this. The eyepiece is sensitive. You can shut it off, and I usually do, but when you move your finger over it, it automatically turns into the eyepiece. I'm sure my screen looks disgusting right now because there's fingerprints all over it. But outside of that, this actually, once you get used to the fact of not holding it up to your eye, becomes extremely comfortable. The other weird thing about it is when you shoot with a mirror, you anticipate the clunk of the mirror opening on this camera. So you can shoot at 1/8 of a second knowing that when you hear that clunk, you got to stay steady. With this one, you don't actually hear the shutter open. You only hear it close. So it takes a little getting used to when you first start out. Now I'm very comfortable with it. But at first it was like, even at 1/30th of a second, I couldn't seem to take like a real steady picture. But after about a week, it all became very clear. Outside of that, that's pretty much my sum up of the direct comparison between the two cameras. If you have any questions, feel free to hit me up. I have no problem. Please follow my channel. I'm going to be throwing up a lot more videos like this. I kind of actually enjoy doing this, so I'm doing it between shoots, and I'll talk to you later. See ya.